The Appalachian sun was brutal, a flaming eye glaring through Eleanor's windshield like it had a personal vendetta. Sweat trickled down her back, soaking into the silk blouse she'd stupidly chosen for what was supposed to be a smooth 2-hour drive. Her BMW 530i, her sleek little urban fortress, now felt more like a mobile sauna. She was halfway to a conference in some postcard-perfect small town, following what her GPS had optimistically called a scenic shortcut. Scenic, sure. Scenic is in nothing but trees, no gas stations, and absolutely no cell service. Then the car coughed, sputtered, and died. Just like that. Her high-tech German machine had betrayed her, dashboard going dark like it had given up on life. Eleanor smacked the steering wheel. Really? Now? You're supposed to be the reliable one in this relationship. She yanked her door open and only to hiss when the metal seared her palm. Perfect. Roasted urban planner coming right up. The mountains loomed silent around her, thick with green, beautiful, yes, but also suffocatingly still. No traffic, no people, no hope. Until the growl of an engine rolled through the valley, not sleek, not polished, but rough and steady, like a heartbeat that had seen some things. A beat-up Chevy truck crested the hill, bed stacked with watermelons, corn, and a couple of pumpkins that looked like they were riding shotgun. It rumbled toward her, exhaust coughing like an old smoker, but somehow the sight made her chest loosen. The driver hopped out, and Eleanor forgot for a second how to breathe. He wasn't glossy magazine handsome. He was real. Sun-browned skin, flannel shirt with the sleeves shoved up, hands that looked like they'd actually done work. A full beard framed his jaw, dark eyes sharp but tired, like the forest itself had decided to stare back at her. He didn't ask questions, just popped his hood, pulled out a pair of jumper cables that looked like they'd survived the Civil War, and muttered in a gravelly voice, "Try it now." Her car purred back to life on command, like it would listen to him but not her. Typical. She rolled down her window, words tripping on her tongue. Thank you. Seriously. I thought I was about to die out here and be eaten by raccoons." He just gave a single nod, calm as stone, disconnected the cables, and headed back toward his truck like this was no big deal. No introduction, no payment, no heroic chest thumping. Just helped and left. Eleanor sat there, engine humming, watching his taillights vanish down the dirt road. Something about the whole thing tugged at her, unsettling and magnetic all at once. A man who fixed problems, didn't brag about it, and drove off without even asking for her number? That was new. The memory of Caleb, that silent stranger on the side of the road, clung to Eleanor long after her car had been fixed and her city life swallowed her again. The conference had been a success. Rooms filled with polished people and polished words about polished futures. But all she could think about was the man who had stepped out of nowhere with watermelons in the back of his truck and kindness in his hands. In a world where everything had a price tag, his help was an unsolvable riddle. Pure, unbought, free. The thought of not thanking him gnawed at her. It was absurd, she told herself, but the absurd had already taken root. The problem was simple and impossible. The gravel road had no name, and Caleb's truck carried no plate. Back in Los Angeles, where apps and algorithms could find anyone in seconds, he was a ghost. And yet, ghosts can be followed. A few restless nights later, Eleanor was back behind the wheel, heading toward the Appalachians. This time it wasn't her sleek BMW, it was a rental Jeep, rough enough to belong to the land she was driving into. She found the spot where her car had once died, the place where her two lives had collided. The silence was thicker now, the trees watching her like old keepers of secrets. She nearly turned back until she saw it, a thin curl of smoke against the sky, the only sign of life for miles. It led her to a small wooden house, stoic against time, its porch sagging under the weight of years. An old man sat in a rocking chair, his white hair as stubborn as the mountains themselves. He watched her with the measured gaze of someone who had lived long enough to know better. "Can I help you, miss?" His voice rasped like dry wood. Eleanor swallowed. "This may sound strange, but a few days ago, my car broke down on this road. A farmer stopped to help me. He had a truck full of watermelons. He didn't give me his name. I just wanted to thank him." The man's eyes narrowed, then softened. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Ah, that'd be Caleb. That's just his way. Doesn't think much of fuss. Helping folks, well, he figures that's just what a man ought to do." Relief washed through her chest. "So it was Caleb. Do you know where he lives?" The man, as Ben introduced himself, stood slowly, joints creaking. He pointed toward the woods. "Follow the bend, cross the creek. His farm's tucked back there. Red barn, hard to miss once you see it." He looked at her then, his expression equal parts curiosity and respect. Funny thing, people don't usually come back just to say thank you. World's too fast for that now. But here you are. Eleanor smiled, though her pulse thudded in her throat. She thanked Ben and started back toward her car. The same dirt road that once felt like failure now shimmered with promise. Each step carried her closer to Caleb, closer to the man who had, without knowing it, unsettled her perfectly ordered world. Eleanor followed the gravel road, dust rising behind the rented Jeep. The afternoon sun beat down relentlessly, but her nerves mingled with a strange thrill. The landscape began to open up, revealing fields neatly kept and a stream glinting in the light. Around the bend Ben had mentioned, her heart leapt. A massive red barn, paint weathered by sun and wind, with a modest wooden house standing before it. Caleb's farm. She parked near the old, dusty truck, the same one that had saved her life days earlier. Stepping out, her soft leather shoes sunk slightly into the dirt. Her linen dress, perfectly tailored for Los Angeles streets and boardrooms, now felt like a costume in this rugged, earthy world. The front door opened and Caleb appeared, a steaming mug in hand. Surprise etched his features, dark beard and sun-kissed hair framing a face even more striking in his own environment. He froze, eyes locking on her. "You," he said, voice deep and rough with disbelief. Eleanor's cheeks flushed. I'm Eleanor. I'm sorry for showing up unannounced, but I had to thank you. What you did on the road, it was incredibly kind, and people don't do that anymore." Caleb stepped closer, calm but curious. "It was nothing. You were in trouble. That's just what we do here." "I know, but in my world, in the city, kindness without a reason is rare. I couldn't let it go. I needed to give something back." The tension between them wasn't conflict. It was a meeting of two worlds. Her, a symbol of urban life, elegant and precise. He, embodiment of land and simplicity, solid and unpretentious. Caleb studied her quietly, eyes scanning. Not rude, but intrigued. He said finally, "Come in. Have some coffee. I just brewed it." Eleanor hesitated, then accepted. The invitation was simple, but powerful, an open door bridging their two worlds. Her nervousness melted into quiet comfort as she stepped inside. The house was simple, but immaculate. Dark wooden walls and polished pine floors carried the scent of earth, smoke, and coffee. A stone fireplace, a few armchairs, a shelf of worn books, and a vintage radio. No screens, no gadgets, just a life lived simply. "Sit down," Caleb said, motioning to a chair. He poured coffee into 2 ceramic mugs and headed one to her. "It's simple, not your fancy coffee, but honest." Eleanor held the warmth of the mug between her hands. "It's perfect, thank you." She took a slow sip. "You're surprised to see me here, aren't you?" Caleb's eyes held her steadily. "Yes. City folks, they come to see the scenery, take pictures, then leave. You're the first to come back." "I didn't come back for scenery," she said softly. "I came to thank you. In my life, everything's transactional. But what you did, it was different, pure." He chuckled, low and rough. "Pure? It's just helping someone in struggle. Has nothing to do with city or country. It's about being human." Eleanor smiled, the tension easing. "But you didn't let me thank you, and I needed to. I feel indebted." Caleb shook his head. "You don't need to feel that way." His gaze softened as it dropped to her hands wrapped around the mug. "You look lucky. Why did your car break down at that exact spot?" "Luck has strange ways," she said thoughtfully. "I wondered why it happened. Maybe it was a good thing." Their eyes met, and the silence that followed was no longer awkward, but comfortable. Like the space between mountains and sky, coffee warming their hands, the bridge between their worlds quietly formed. This was no longer a transaction. It was a connection, delicate but undeniable, a bond only beginning to take shape. The coffee, now slightly cooled, became the pretext for an afternoon of unexpected closeness. Eleanor and Caleb, seated in opposite armchairs, began weaving their worlds together with words. She spoke about her work as an urban planner, the passion behind designing spaces people could love, the stress of deadlines, and the hidden loneliness of city life, even amid millions of people. Caleb listened with quiet intensity, his questions sharp but genuine, revealing someone who truly absorbed her every word. In return, Caleb described his life with the poetic clarity that made Eleanor pause. He spoke of the cycles of planting and harvesting, the whims of weather, the satisfaction of the land yielding fruit. He wasn't just working, he was creating life. The care in his voice, the rhythm of his hands as he gestured, carried the same fervor she did when explaining urban projects. "Outsiders think life here is slow," Caleb said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "But time isn't measured by hours or minutes. It's sunlight, moonlight, the seasons. You've always got to work to keep up." Eleanor laughed softly. "The city's the same in a way, but our time is measured in meetings, deadlines, the constant grind. It eats you up instead of nurturing you." The contrast between their worlds was clear, but so was the spark between them. Mutual admiration bloomed with every shared insight. Eleanor found herself captivated not just by his simplicity, but by the quiet wisdom that anchored him. Caleb, who had seemed wary at first, now studied her with curiosity and fascination. She wasn't a visitor to his life. She was a woman willing to step into his world, take interest in it, and hold her own with grace and intelligence. The coffee had long gone cold, but the warmth between them only intensified. Words had bridged the distance, transforming a casual meeting into the first thread of something deeper. As the afternoon faded, golden light spilled through the windows, dust motes dancing in the sunbeams. Eleanor rose, and Caleb's gaze followed her instinctively. The linen of her dress moved softly as she shifted, accentuating the subtle curve of her waist, the gentle slope of her shoulders, the elegance of her presence. In that moment, he felt the absence of her world in his own, a missing piece that he hadn't realized he was longing for. Life on the farm had given him peace and purpose, yet he felt a new ache. He missed a woman's presence, the scent that wasn't wood smoke or rain-soaked earth, the voice that wasn't his own or the wind, her laughter, Her words, the way she carried herself, they lingered in him long after the sound of her heels faded on the wooden floor. Outside, the evening air was cool, the countryside alive with crickets. Eleanor turned toward him, offering a soft smile. Their eyes met, and the quiet between them throbbed with unspoken tension. Caleb wished he could speak what he felt, but the words weren't enough. She had stirred something elemental within him, a pull as undeniable as the soil beneath his boots. "Thank you again, Caleb," she said, softer now, almost a whisper. He only nodded, letting her words hang in the space between them. She climbed into the Jeep, the engine breaking the spell of silence, and drove down the dirt road. The exhaust smoke lingered in the air, carrying away more than just fumes. It carried the echo of her presence. Caleb remained on the porch, the solitude of the farm now tinged with longing. The quiet was no longer merely peace. It was anticipation, a deep ache waiting to be answered. The week in Los Angeles had drained Eleanor. Meetings blurred into emails, presentations into business dinners, all painted in shades of gray. Her thoughts kept slipping away, carried by the memory of Caleb. The earthy warmth of him, the deep timbre of his voice, the way his eyes had seemed to see right through her. The distance only amplified the pull she felt toward him. This weekend, there would be no excuses, no broken car, no old gratitude, just an irresistible, undeniable need. When Eleanor arrived at the farm on Saturday, the Jeep crunching along the gravel road, she felt a thrill she hadn't experienced in months. She wore jeans and a simple t-shirt, deliberately casual, signaling she was here not as a tourist, but as someone ready to step into his world. Caleb saw her from a distance. His face lit up with a slow, genuine smile, a mixture of surprise and quiet joy. "You came back," he said, his voice low and warm. "I did," I replied, my nerves easing with every step toward him. "I hope you don't mind." "Never," he murmured, the single word heavy with meaning. "I'm finishing up picking the oranges. Want to help?" What began as work quickly became a subtle dance of closeness. The sun caught the sweat on Caleb's forehead, the t-shirt clinging to his frame, highlighting the lean strength in his arms. Eleanor noticed the scent that lingered, a mix of fresh citrus, wood, and something uniquely him. It made her pulse quicken. Caleb guided her to the lower branches, his hand brushing hers lightly as they reached for fruit. The touch was brief, almost accidental, yet it sent a shiver through Eleanor. Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither spoke. The attraction between them was no longer curiosity. It was a living, breathing pull. "You didn't have to come back," Caleb said, voice rougher than before, breaking the tension. Eleanor stepped closer, feeling the warmth radiating from him. "I know, but I wanted to. I can't stop thinking about you." He swallowed, a flicker of vulnerability crossing his features. "Eleanor, we're from such different worlds." "So what?" she countered, daring now. "Is there some law that says people from different worlds can't connect?" Her hand brushed lightly against his arm, lingering just long enough to feel the strength beneath it. Caleb's gaze darkened, intent and unguarded. "I feel it too," he admitted, voice low, almost a growl. The space between them shrank, the charged silence almost unbearable. Eleanor took another step closer, until their bodies hovered inches apart. Her lips parted slightly, her breath mingling with his. "Then what do we do about it?" she whispered. He hesitated, caught between desire and restraint. Then, with a reverence that made her heart flutter, he reached up, caressing her cheek. His touch started gentle, testing the limits, before firming as he traced her jawline with deliberate care. "I don't know what we're doing, Eleanor," he murmured, voice trembling, "but I don't want you to leave." She tilted her head, letting her lips brush his, teasing, inviting. "Then don't." The final barrier shattered. Their kiss was tentative at first, hesitant, as if both feared breaking something fragile. But the restraints quickly gave way to urgency, a silent acknowledgement of longing, desire, and something much deeper. Caleb's hands slid to her waist, pulling her closer, while Eleanor's fingers tangled in his dark hair, reveling in the rough texture beneath her touch. The sun continued its descent, painting the grove in molten orange and violet. In that moment, the world beyond the trees vanished, leaving only the two of them, their separate lives merging into something intoxicatingly real. When they finally pulled back, breathless and flushed, Eleanor whispered, a shy smile playing on her lips, "I've wanted to do that since the day my car broke down." Caleb's grin mirrored hers, full of heat and relief. "Me too." And then he kissed her again, slower this time, more deliberate, sealing the awakening of something neither of them had anticipated, but both had been quietly yearning for. The farewell the next day was difficult. Eleanor felt a reluctance to leave the farm that she had never experienced before. The passionate kiss in the orchard had cemented something between them, and returning to her life in Los Angeles felt like a betrayal of that new and fragile reality. She promised Caleb she would call, and as her Jeep drove away, she looked in the rearview mirror and saw him standing there, a lonely, strong figure in the landscape, waving until she was out of sight. Back in her routine, the contrast was brutal. Eleanor's schedule was packed with meetings and business dinners. The air conditioning of the offices replaced the heat of the Appalachian sun. The constant sound of traffic drowned out the birdsong. She felt disconnected. In the middle of a presentation for a new project, she would find herself thinking about the feel of Caleb's hand, the sound of his voice, and the woody scent of his cologne. The longing was no longer a vague feeling, but a real yearning, a physical ache that constantly reminded her of where she would rather be. The bridge between their two worlds was built with text messages. At first, Eleanor sent a simple "good morning," but Caleb's replies were immediately bold, and the conversation became a game of flirt. Eleanor: "Morning. My view today is a lot of glass and concrete, missing those blue mountains." Caleb: "The view here is just dirt and 100 chores, but I keep picturing you in the middle of it all." Eleanor felt her heart race, surprised by his forwardness. She typed a quick, playful response. "I'm not exactly dressed for farm work today, just a lot of heels and spreadsheets." Caleb: "I can picture that, but I'm still thinking about the way those jeans looked on you, and the way your hand felt in my hair." Eleanor's cheeks flushed. She wasn't used to this kind of raw honesty. It was a new and exhilarating feeling. Eleanor: "You're a very cheeky farmer, Caleb." Caleb: "Maybe, but you make me want to break every rule I've ever had." Eleanor: "What kind of rules?" Caleb: "The kind that say I shouldn't be so obsessed with a woman I've known for a week." The distance, which had seemed like an insurmountable obstacle, was in fact proof that their connection was not just a fleeting crush or a summer fling, but something deeper, something that time and space could not erase. The longing turned into a confirmation that what they felt was real. The anticipation of seeing him again began to burn in Eleanor, and she knew, deep in her heart, that he felt the same way. That night, lying in her apartment with the city noise muffled by her double-glass windows, Eleanor stared at her phone. The screen lit up. Caleb: "Can't sleep. Blame you." She smiled, biting her lip before replying. Eleanor. And what exactly did I do? Caleb. Put that kiss in my head. Now I can't think about anything else. Her pulse quickened. Eleanor. Funny, I was just thinking the same. Caleb. Careful, city girl. You keep talking like that and I'll show up at your office tomorrow, boots and all. Eleanor. You wouldn't dare. Caleb. Try me. I'd walk right into your glass tower, track dirt on the marble floors, and kiss you in front of every suit in that building. Eleanor laughed out loud, covering her face with the pillow. Eleanor, you are impossible. Caleb. No, just stubborn and very motivated. Eleanor. Motivated by what exactly? Caleb. By the memory of your laugh, by the way you looked at me in the orchard, and the fact that I can't seem to stop wanting you. Eleanor hesitated, her cheeks warm. Eleanor, you're making it very hard to concentrate on my spreadsheets right now. Caleb, good. I don't want you thinking about spreadsheets. I want you thinking about me. She bit her lip again, her heart thudding. Eleanor, you do realize I have meetings in the morning, right? Caleb, then let me give you something to carry into them. Imagine me, leaning close, whispering in your ear. Eleanor, Caleb, telling you I'm counting the days until I can kiss you again, and that when I do, it won't be in an orchard. Where then? Somewhere private, somewhere I can take my time. Her fingers trembled as she typed her next reply. Eleanor, you're going to get me in trouble. Caleb, sweetheart, that's the idea. Eleanor's week had been brutal. Meetings stacked on top of meetings, her laptop screaming with endless charts, her head pounding with numbers that wouldn't add up. She was in the middle of explaining a projection when her phone buzzed once, then again, then a third time, insistent. She sighed, thinking it was another crisis from the office. Sliding her phone from her pocket, she froze. I'm on your street. Her pulse tripped over itself. Fingers flew. What? Where exactly? Look out the window, city girl. She excused herself, heart pounding, and rushed to the glass wall of a conference room. Down on the street, amid yellow cabs, briefcases, and suits, was Caleb's battered old Chevrolet. He leaned against it like he owned the place, hands tucked in his pockets, boots planted on Manhattan asphalt, as if it were farm dirt. He didn't belong there. And yet, somehow, he was the only real thing in sight. Eleanor didn't even remember hitting the elevator button, just that she was suddenly flying out the lobby doors, breathless. Caleb saw her, and the grin that spread across his face was pure mischief, undercut with something raw that made her chest tighten. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, half laughing, half scolding, out of breath. "You," he said simply, eyes glinting. "You were driving me insane with those messages, so I thought, hell, why not make you lose focus in person?" Before she could retort, he held up a small wooden box. She blinked as he pressed it into her hands. Inside, a pile of strawberries, fresh and bright, still kissed with dew. And nestled on top, one wildflower, the exact kind she'd once snapped a picture of and sent him. Her throat tightened. "Caleb." He shrugged, tilting his head, that smirk tugging at his lips. "What? Thought I'd bring a little dirt road romance to your concrete jungle." "Do you have any idea how crazy this is?" she asked, though her smile betrayed her. "Crazy?" He leaned closer, voice dropping just for her. "Crazy is me not coming. Crazy is me pretending I'm not thinking about you every damn second." The crowd bustled around them. Taxis honked, but Eleanor barely noticed. Standing there, strawberries in hand, Caleb looking at her like she was the only thing that mattered, her world tilted. Now, he teased, brushing a finger over the edge of the box. Are you going to thank me properly? Or do I have to cause a scene right here on Fifth Avenue? Her laugh broke, soft and trembling. You wouldn't. Oh, sweetheart, try me. Their first official date felt like stepping into another dimension. Eleanor had chosen a small, elegant restaurant in the West Village. Soft lights, vintage jazz, menus printed on textured cardstock. Caleb, in a clean button-up that looked as though he'd ironed it with his own hands that morning, stood out immediately. Not because he didn't fit in, but because he didn't seem to care about fitting in. He'd carried himself with the same quiet confidence he had on the farm, even as eyes slid toward his worn boots under the table. Eleanor couldn't stop glancing at him. The roughness in his movements, the way his hand dwarfed the wine glass, the way he scanned the room like he was more comfortable watching than performing. He was magnetic, but she could feel the tension humming in him, like he was forcing himself to play by rules he didn't believe in. When her friends joined them later for drinks, that tension sharpened. Their polite smiles masked curiosity that spilled out in cutting little questions. So you're a farmer? Like, that's your career? Wow, do you even get reception out there? Each one landed like a slap Eleanor couldn't block. She smiled tightly, tried to smooth over the awkwardness, but heat crept up her neck. Caleb didn't flinch, just answered evenly, eyes flicking between Eleanor and her friends, reading the space like he would a storm cloud. By the time her friends left, the night air between them felt heavy. Eleanor laced her fingers through his under the table, desperate to bridge the silence. His palm was warm, rough against hers, grounding her. Are you okay? She asked softly. Caleb nodded, though his jaw was set. I'm fine, but I get it now. This isn't just you and me. There's a whole world sitting between us. Eleanor swallowed. There is. My friends, my job, my family, they don't understand. They see two puzzle pieces that don't fit. Caleb leaned back, exhaling through his nose. Where I come from, success is simple. The soil either gives or it doesn't. Cows either thrive or they don't. You don't prove yourself with titles or bank accounts. You prove it with your hands. I can carry that kind of weight, but I don't know if I can live in a place where I'm just some rough edge for you to smooth out. Her heart cracked at the thought. She tightened her grip on his hand. You're not a project, Caleb. You're the first thing in years that's felt real. My world looks shiny from the outside, but it's fast, it's cold, and it never stops demanding. With you, I feel like I can finally breathe. Something shifted in his eyes then, softness cutting through the guarded lines. They didn't talk about attraction or the orchard kiss or the text that left her cheeks burning. That part was already settled. Instead, they sat there long after the plates were cleared, talking about futures neither of them could quite map out. It wasn't a fairy tale they were building. It was raw, complicated, fragile, and yet it was theirs. For the first time, Eleanor understood the confrontation wasn't against each other. It was against the vast, stubborn distance between their lives. And somehow, they were both stubborn enough to fight it. They left the restaurant hand in hand, the night air cool and buzzing with the hum of the city. For a few blocks, neither of them spoke. Eleanor replayed their conversation in her head. The honesty of it, the ache of it. She was bracing herself for the wait to linger, but Caleb broke the silence with a sly glance down at her. "You know," he said, his drawl low and deliberate, "I think I did pretty well back there. Didn't knock over a wine glass, didn't call the waiter sir. I was practically civilized." Eleanor laughed, relief spilling out of her chest. "You did great, though you did look at the foie gras like it had personally offended you." "It did," he said, dead serious. "Any food that comes in portions smaller than my thumb can't be trusted." She shook her head, smiling. "You really don't belong here." He leaned closer, his shoulder brushing hers. "Funny, 'cause right now, walking next to you, I feel like I do." Her steps faltered for a second. He noticed, of course. His grin widened. "You're ridiculous," she murmured, cheeks warm. "And you like it." His voice dropped, almost a whisper, meant for her alone. "Admit it." She rolled her eyes, trying not to grin. "You're impossible." He stopped them in the middle of the sidewalk, turning her to face him, the city streaming around them like water around a rock. His thumb brushed across her knuckles as he leaned in just slightly, not enough to kiss, just enough to make her breath catch. "I crossed 1,000 miles just to sit in some fancy restaurant with you. What makes you think I'd stop being impossible now?" Her heart hammered. "People are staring," she whispered. "Good," he said, his mouth tugging into that slow, wicked smile. "Let them see exactly how far gone I am for you." After that raw night in the city, something in Eleanor shifted. The distance between them wasn't a cliff anymore. It was a bridge they decided stubbornly to keep walking across together. Back in Los Angeles, her days no longer felt hollow. She wasn't just longing for Caleb anymore. She was plotting ways to stitch their worlds together. Her spreadsheets, once sterile, now had his name scribbled in the margins. Weekends became sacred. She drove out to the farm not just as a guest, but as someone rolling up her sleeves. She learned to haul hay, gather eggs, and curse at tractors that refused to start. Caleb watched with amused patience, stepping in only when her stubbornness threatened to send her tumbling into the mud. One afternoon, after she'd managed to spill half a bucket of feed on her shoes, he leaned against the fence, grinning. "City girl, if you keep feeding your boots instead of the chickens, we're gonna have some very confused birds." She shot him a glare, cheeks flushed. "Don't mock me. This is harder than it looks." "Sweetheart, you've got a master's degree in whatever it is you do, but you can't outsmart a hen. That's humbling." She laughed despite herself, brushing dirt from her blouse. "Keep talking, farmer, and I'll draft a zoning plan that bans tractors just to spite you." "Do that," he said, stepping close enough that she had to tilt her chin up at him. "I'll carry you into the barn until you change your mind." She shoved at his chest, but the spark in her eyes gave her away. Their banter wasn't just play anymore. It was a rhythm, as natural as the sun coming up over the ridge. But Eleanor's biggest contribution came from the world she knew best. Sitting on the porch one evening, maps and notebooks spread across her lap, she looked up at him. "Caleb, you guys are working twice as hard for half the return. What if we organized a cooperative farmers market, closer to the city, streamlined supply chain? Better reach. It's doable." He frowned thoughtfully, rubbing the back of his neck. "Sounds fancy, but will it work?" "Yes," she said firmly. "I can make it work." He studied her, the setting sun turning his eyes gold. "You know what I love about you?" She raised an eyebrow. "Besides my ability to trip over chickens?" He chuckled. "Besides that, you see things I don't. My world's dirt and fences. Yours is glass and plans. And somehow, when we put them together, it It fits. Eleanor swallowed the lump in her throat. We're not giving up our lives, Caleb. We're just weaving them together. He leaned back in his chair, boots crossed, smirk tugging at his lips. Guess that means I gotta start reading about, what's it called? Zoning? Yes, and I'll quiz you. He reached over, tugged the notebook off her lap, and set it aside. Fine, but later. Right now, I've got my own kind of studying to do. She laughed as he pulled her closer, the porch creaking beneath them. Over time, the road between the city and the farm became a well-worn artery of their lives. When Eleanor had tight project deadlines, Caleb would show up in her world too, not for the skyline, but for her. He'd sit quietly at the back of her presentation rooms, boots planted on sleek carpet, arms crossed, the solid weight of his presence giving her the calm she needed. After one particularly grueling pitch, she found him leaning against her office wall. "Well?" she asked nervously. He tilted his head. "Half those suits looked like they needed a nap, but you owned the room. Remind me never to argue with you in front of a crowd." "Smart man," she said, smiling, before softening. "Thanks for being here." He shrugged, but his eyes were steady on her. Or else would I be? They still texted late at night, but now the messages were a mix of flirtation and collaboration. Soil composition reports make zoning codes look like children's books. "Flirt with me instead. It's easier." "You're impossible." "And you like it." Their love was no longer just fire. It was roots. It grew into something solid, something that could weather both storms and city deadlines. They weren't just Eleanor and Caleb anymore. They were something else, something new. A third world they'd built between them, messy, beautiful, and entirely their own. That night, back in Los Angeles, Eleanor sat on her couch, zoning out with her laptop on her knees. A notification lit up her phone. "How's my favorite city, girl?" Drowning in zoning codes. Why do they all read like they were written to torture me? "Want me to come over and wrestle those zoning codes for you? I've been known to take down bulls twice my size." Trust me, zoning laws are scarier than bulls. Doubt it. At least bulls don't use legal jargon. She smirked, shaking her head. "What are you even doing right now?" "Sitting on the porch, watching the stars, thinking about how much better it'd look if you were here." Her heart squeezed. Smooth, very smooth. Not smooth, honest. Also, do you know how distracting it is baling hay when I'm picturing you in those jeans? Her cheeks heated instantly. "Caleb!" "What? You asked what I was doing. I'm giving a full report. Transparency builds trust, right?" "You're ridiculous." "You love it." She stared at the screen, biting back a grin. He never let her win. "Admit it, you like having me trip over chickens just so you can laugh at me." "Guilty. But I'd carry you out of the mud every time, happily." "That's unfairly sweet." "Don't spread it around. I've got a reputation to protect. Rugged farmer, cheeky, impossible." "You forgot insufferable." "Insufferably handsome, you mean." She laughed out loud, startling herself. "Go back to your hay bales before you get cocky." "Sweetheart, I was born cocky, and you like it." The glow of the laptop illuminated Eleanor's face as Caleb leaned back in his rocking chair on the porch, the sun dipping behind the Appalachian hills. "So, you're saying if we build a raised bed here," Eleanor traced a line on her tablet, "we can actually double the yield without increasing labor?" Caleb squinted at the screen, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I don't know what half these numbers mean, but double the yield? Sounds like magic. I like magic." Eleanor laughed. "It's just math. Very, very boring magic." He grinned, leaning closer to the camera. You're saying boring like it's a bad thing. I think I'd like some boring magic if it comes with your voice explaining it." Eleanor rolled her eyes, but her cheeks warmed. Careful, Caleb, you're dangerously close to flattery. Dangerous for a man who can't even figure out my coffee machine yet. I figured out your coffee machine, he shot back quickly, a teasing spark in his eyes. Took me 10 minutes, but I conquered it. I'm basically a barista now. She snorted. Sure. Did it involve burning half your fingers? Maybe, but only a little. His grin widened. I'll take it as a badge of honor. Speaking of badges, when are you coming out here again? I have a few more dangerous chores that could use your city-honed skills. Eleanor tilted her head, pretending to consider. More dangerous chores, you say? Do these include wielding a chainsaw or rescuing chickens from trees? Both. But mostly the part where you distract me with that laugh of yours while I try not to drop the oranges. She laughed out loud, the sound spilling through the speaker. I see how it is. You're using flattery as a weapon now. Very clever, Caleb. I prefer to call it honest observation, and maybe a little incentive to make sure you visit. The farm is boring without you. Eleanor felt a tug in her chest. I could say the same about the city. It's all concrete and deadlines. You bring the color, the chaos I actually like. Caleb tilted his head, eyes softening. Chaos, huh? I think I like that word. Fits us, doesn't it? Two worlds, a little messy, but better together. I think you're right, Eleanor said, her smile lingering. And maybe next weekend I'll come out there again, but only if you promise not to make me climb a tree. I make no promises, he replied, with a mischievous grin. But I can promise you'll get more of my terrible barista skills and a few stolen oranges. Maybe even a kiss if you're lucky. Eleanor's heart skipped. Is that a threat or an invitation? Caleb's grin deepened, and he leaned back, letting the golden light of the setting sun frame him perfectly. Depends. Are you brave enough to find out? Eleanor laughed, shaking her head at the screen. I guess I'll just have to be. But don't be surprised if I steal the first kiss instead. And I wouldn't have it any other way, he said, voice low and warm, eyes locking with hers through the screen. For a moment, the distance between Los Angeles and the Appalachians didn't exist. There was only them, the soft hum of life in two very different worlds, and the growing certainty that they were building something stronger than either could have imagined. One conversation, one laugh, one teasing glance at a screen. Eleanor leaned back, letting the warmth of the afternoon sun wash over her, her hands still loosely intertwined with Caleb's. You know, she began, a teasing note in her voice. I never thought a broken-down car would lead me to this. Caleb chuckled, a low, warm sound that made her heart skip. And I never thought fixing a car would make me lose sleep thinking about the woman who drove it. She raised an eyebrow. Lose sleep, huh? I should charge you for that. Not a chance, he said, mock serious. I'd pay in fruit, though, or maybe a few of those fancy city coffee ideas of yours. Eleanor laughed, the sound carrying lightly in the quiet countryside. You really think your farm hands would accept coffee as payment? Depends on the coffee, he replied, leaning closer, his eyes glinting with mischief. And who's serving it? The playfulness hung between them, charged yet effortless. Caleb nudged her gently with his shoulder. You've changed the place, you know? The barn, the garden. It's not just my farm anymore. It's ours. Eleanor's smile softened, her fingers brushing against his arm. Ours. I like the sound of that. But 3 weeks in, I'm starting to wonder, are you going to let me keep coming back, or am I just a temporary visitor in your world? Caleb shook his head, laughing. Temporary? You've set up permanent camp in my head. And in my heart. Her breath caught, and she leaned closer. Careful, Caleb. Those words have consequences. He grinned, resting his forehead against hers. Good. Then maybe the consequence is more afternoons like this. More coffee, more stubbornness, more us. Eleanor laughed softly, feeling the tension of the past weeks melt away. You make it sound dangerously appealing. Life's better when it's a little dangerous, he said, his voice low, a hint of a challenge in his tone, especially when it's with you. They stayed like that for a long moment, foreheads touching, hands entwined, watching the sun dip behind the hills. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a fairy tale. But it was theirs, full of sparks, laughter, and a kind of love that didn't need perfection to feel infinite. Caleb stood, holding out his hand. Come on, I've got something to show you. Eleanor raised an eyebrow, curious. Something other than more mud, sweat, and farm chaos? He grinned, tugging her along toward the barn. Exactly. You spent 3 weeks helping me. Now it's time you see the fun side of farming. Inside, the barn smelled of hay and sun-warmed wood. Sunlight streamed through cracks in the walls, dust motes dancing like tiny fairies. Caleb grabbed a bale of hay, nudging her playfully. Ever tried a proper hay fight? Eleanor laughed, shaking her head. I'm not sure that's in my city planner manual. Consider it an advanced lesson in rural living, Caleb teased. He tossed a small handful of hay at her. Eleanor shrieked, dodging and flicking a handful back at him. The two of them laughed like children, the sound echoing through the barn, blending with the faint creak of the old wooden rafters and the distant clucking of chickens outside. Careful, Caleb said between laughs, grabbing another handful. I'm dangerous when I'm competitive. Oh, I can handle dangerous, she shot back, ducking under his arm and sprinting toward the door. But as she ran, her foot caught a small bale, and she stumbled into him. They collided in a tangle of limbs, laughter turning to breathless silence as their faces hovered inches apart. You're hopeless, Caleb murmured, his forehead brushing hers. And you're enjoying it, Eleanor replied with a smirk. Caleb's grin softened into something more tender. Maybe. But I'd be enjoying a lot more if you just admit that you like being here. I do, she whispered, letting her hand find his. I like this. You, the chaos, the sun, the smell of farm. He chuckled, leaning down to press a quick kiss to her temple, then whispered, Good, because this farm, and maybe a certain stubborn city girl, aren't going anywhere. Outside, the sun continued its slow descent, golden light spilling across the fields. Eleanor and Caleb stepped out onto the dirt path, the breeze carrying the scent of hay, soil, and wildflowers. Caleb picked a stray sunflower from the edge of the field, tucking it behind her ear. Looks good on you, he said, smirking. Eleanor giggled. I look ridiculous. You look like you belong, he corrected, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. Here, with me. They stood there, the farm alive with the hum of insects, the distant lowing of cows, and the chirping of birds settling for the evening. Every sound, every smell, every touch reminded them of the connection they were building, playful, real, and undeniably theirs. Eleanor leaned into him, feeling the rough texture of his shirt under her fingers. 3 weeks, and it already feels like home. Caleb held her close, pressing his lips briefly to her forehead. Then let's make sure the next 3 weeks and the next 3 years feel the same. The farm, once just a place of work and solitude, had become a playground, a refuge, and a stage for a love that didn't need perfection to only laughter, adventure, and the courage to cross worlds. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel and follow our upcoming videos to continue exploring new narratives.